Hey, well, there's just so many, and I know there's a lot to come. Max Keiser and you name it, all the guys, Luke Rudkowski. And I'll tell you what, I want to back up a little bit to what David Icke had to say and what Luke Rudkowski was talking about. And that was what they were talking about was that we need to be out there confronting some of these globalists and Illuminati folks out there when they're out there in public, asking them the tough questions. And, I can talk about a big success that we already had in a lot of ways, especially in 2008. During the 2007-2008 presidential election season, we had a big unheralded success, I think, because the A team, the presidential A team, I think, for that election was Rudolph Giuliani on the right, the Republican, and Hillary Clinton, the Dick Cheney of the Democrat Party, were the A team of the globalists, of the Illuminati for that election. But it was literally, especially the way Rudolph Giuliani was dogged. I mean, Rudolph Giuliani got dogged everywhere he went by a combination of 9/11 truthers and Ron Paul revolutionaries. And they kept asking him tough questions. They'd ask him about 9/11 in broad daylight in public. And Ron Paul revolutionaries would approach him and try to ask about the Federal Reserve and what he would do with that and the fraud that is the IRS and you name it, all these different questions. And I think ultimately that in the case of Rudolph Giuliani, all those folks out there in public confronting him with questions, especially about 9/11, the guy could not get away. If you just get on YouTube and type in Rudolph Giuliani's name and 9/11 truth, We Are Change, YouTube that and search that, and you'll be able to find all these videos. I'm sure they're still up on YouTube, where you can see Rudolph Giuliani being questioned repeatedly about 9/11 truth, about the Building 7, him coming out and talking about Building 7 and him, miraculously being in the know and not being in Building 7 when it's blowing up and exploding and ultimately coming down and crashing down in its own footprint. So that was a big, big victory that we had in 2008, and it's an unheralded, untalked about victory that we were able to derail the globalist A team of Hillary Clinton, who, like I say, I think she's like the Dick Cheney of the left, and we got a lot of help from Rhino Republicans derailing Hillary because she is the lightning rod of the left and the Dick Cheney of the left. So Rhino Republicans were going to get fired up big time if Hillary would have ended up being the nominee out of that 2008 race. So it's exciting to see we've had those victories moving forward. I noticed it during the 2007-2008 presidential race as well, that we were already monsters on the web. And Alex, you've really pounced on it here recently in the last 2 or 3 months with these Google searches and how we're trying to work the different Google trends and Yahoo trends and all this with the search terms to get the word out to the nation and the world ultimately. But I noticed back in 2007-2008 that during the Ron Paul revolutionary campaign that I would do multiple searches on the web daily on Google News. I would go to Google News, type in Ron Paul, and I would be looking for any kind of press that he would get. Of course, he didn't get the amount of press that Rudolph Giuliani would get, where they, for a year, I guess, or more, kept telling us Rudolph Giuliani was the leader, front runner of the Republican side of the ticket. But nonetheless, Ron Paul would get some press, and so I would always be looking at that to see every time his name was put in an article in the press on the web, and then boom, one good thing that's happening right now is that all these stories, most of them, they've got area for comments, and I would look at these comments, and boom, right there, the Ron Paul revolutionaries were always on top of things, commenting, and they would have links to Infowars, or they would, sometimes have to spell out Infowars, .com, Infowars.com, because they wouldn't allow the placing of a .com URL in their commentary, but nonetheless, people would guerrilla it in. They talk about Alex Jones. They talk about the fraud that is the Federal Reserve. They talk about 9/11 truth, and those comments are still out there to this day, where people can go back and search these stories. You search the stories about Rudolph Giuliani and Hillary Clinton back then and Ron Paul, and you'd still find these comments down there. And so all these little info, kind of like info grenades for people out there to review a story and read and trip up on and find out, to get on Infowars.com and come to it. And now, forwarding to where we are right now, Alex was asking about where we are in the battle. Well, we just keep moving forward and getting bigger and badder. And now we see with these Google search terms that we're reaching new levels of getting the InfoWar message out there, the message that the New World Order is coming down, and they're looking to come down harder and faster right now because there is this awakening. And so they're really kind of in flux. On one side, they want to pull the plug on the economy. They'd like to stop all the liquidity and put everybody in slave camps right now if they could. But at the same time, there's a level of awakening and acceleration going on that they're deciding, no, maybe we just need to print money and inflate and print more money to keep and try to slow down the awakening. If they can create a good economy, people might go back into the NFL and watching all their Dancing with the Stars and eating their beer or drinking their beer and eating their pizza, and so forth and so on, going back into the world. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the momentum is with us. We've seen the growth on the web. I've tracked the growth that we've been having since I first started listening to Alex Jones in 1997, I believe it was, on 98.9 KJFK here in Austin, blowtorch of a station. Used to be able to pick him up in Waco, Texas, as I drove down to San Antonio frequently every week. I'd catch his show, and ultimately part of the reason I ended up moving to Austin was, in fact, that Alex Jones was here doing the broadcast and wanted to be able to hear him all the time. So anyway, here I've been in Austin since 1999 and seen the movement, engaged it over and over. I remember back in 2002 working an election with Alex Jones' friend Mike Hansen, running for precinct commissioner of Precinct 4 here in Travis County. One of the reasons I worked with Mike Hansen was not only was he a friend and acquaintance of mine, but also to learn about the vote fraud issue, black box voting out there. The vote fraud is for real. I'm here to tell you, if you research that, just do a few searches on the web, search voterescue.org, get on their website, and you can learn about that black box voting is here and it's for real. But you know what? The New World Order has proven that they can't manage every election. There are too many elections for them to micromanage, and that's why I think candidates like Ron Paul get elected, coming out of basically out of the Victoria, Texas area and Lake Jackson area. Ron Paul keeps getting elected because they can't black box everything. I think there are actually good people that are on top of it in different races and different precincts and different congressional districts that are going to be bird dogging and watching for fraud and cheating with electronic voting. And I think that the Rand Paul race, I think Rand Paul in Kentucky is going to be able to win his race in Kentucky. And ultimately, I'm really excited about the November election. I think we're going to see maybe handful of good patriots get in the U.S. House representative seats, and in the Senate, we're hopefully going to see Rand Paul get elected and be the leader of what may be 10 to 15 freshman U.S. senators. We really need to see 10 to 15 freshman U.S. senators, and if Rand Paul can be in there and be their leader, then he can definitely start steering the Senate to being more constitutional. We have been lacking in the Senate having a good person like Rand Paul in there that will have a constitutional take. And in the House, I think hopefully it looks like I wouldn't say it's a sure bet because anything can happen between now and election. We've got a lot of days left. But in the House, we are probably going to see a shift into a Republican majority. It's more certain that we are going to see that, and it's very important that we do at least see, even if it's not a wholesale lot of good constitutional candidates that come into these new freshman seats in the House, if we can at least have the luxury, if you want to call it that, if we can at least have the luxury of having a little bit of gridlock up in D.C. to where you don't have a Democratic-controlled House, a Democratic-controlled Senate, and the executive branch run by Democrats. And now I think the Supreme Court, with the latest Sotomayor and Elena Kagan appointments that I just can't believe that were ramrodded through and succeeded in passing, now we've probably got a Supreme Court that's 5-4 Democrats. So we're really seeing a terrible imbalance at the moment. But this November election, despite black box voting, I think we're still going to see opportunities to get handfuls of good constitutional candidates in the House. And if we can just see Rand Paul get elected and be the leader of a 10 to 15 new freshman U.S. Senator class going into the Senate, then we're going to see a big, big glimmer of hope increase. And another thing that looking forward into the future, as I talked about on the last program when I guested with Alex, that I'm really worried about this lame duck session that's going to occur in November, post-election, November, December, this lame duck session. We really have to watch out because I think the powers that be are really going to strive to pass more laws, and they're going to have a lot of fired U.S. House reps and a lot of fired senators that are going to be mad, and they're going to literally want to burn down the House and Senate and bring in some draconian laws. So I'm really concerned about that.
And we see riots all over the world. We see the Federal Reserve saying the answer to the debt is dollar devaluation. It's been their quiet policy for a long time, now out in the open. And we've got Ron Paul saying, I'll run at the Tea Party this week in Virginia, but things are going to implode. Do they implode after the election in 2012 or before? He's being realistic, saying, I'll probably get elected if they implode before, because he's been on record. See, it's a platform. Things don't happen overnight. We supported him. We gave him $20 million. Now the biggest movement on campuses is a libertarian patriot movement, not controlled right-wing, not controlled communist left-wing, but true patriot movement. The Bilderberg Group is upset about that from our inside sources. They know, Richard, that the awakening is now upon us. And it's now time for everybody's maximum effort to wake up: military, police, everybody. Specifically, though, dealing with the economy, dealing with all the things coming out about the mortgages and the gold going way up, all of this happening. What's your view on that, Richard?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag. On the one hand, it does look like, hey, we are going downhill, and we are. Ultimately, this is going to end badly when they do finally pull the plug. The question is when are they going to pull the plug? They just came out with a story again that they're going to Ben Bernanke is going to get in that helicopter and basically start dumping out cash and start getting it out there. So I think that they're potentially looking at loaning money to people once again that could just fog up a mirror, which is what was happening that caused this housing bubble this first time, this big housing bubble that blew up in 2008, 2009. So it's hard to say how much time we have. What we do know is the clock is ticking down, and at some point the end of this financial economy will have the plug pulled.
And will the people that engineered it use the crisis to sell us on more power for them, or will we expose them now so that they are destroyed for the crimes they've committed? That's the big issue.
Well, that's why we need to pre-expose them. They're just like you've done such a great job of explaining the false flag terror, exposing 9/11 truth, to where, look, here we are. I mean, can you believe this? Rewind back to the fall of 2001, Alex. Rewind back to that, and that's the first time that you and I met in person. And we were thinking, hey, man, after 9/11, that event that they pulled off and the way they did it, what would they not do? And here we are. God has blessed us with almost 10 years. We're over 9 years past.
Well, 9/11 Truth has taken their tool away from them because they can't have people thinking, hey, was this staged?
Well, the same way we've used this 9/11 Truth and exposed it, then that's the same way we need to be exposing all these schemes that they've got going on, including this economic scenario.
Well, it's now mainstream news that the White House is issuing fake terror alerts. And now Fox is saying new Pakistani Taliban operative feared inside U.S. after Times Square failure. So, and we've got all these White House officials like Robert Shapiro and others and Clinton advisors saying Obama needs an Oklahoma City or 9/11 to sell us that he's our daddy, our savior.
Right. And when you see the mainstream press having articles that, oh, well, some of these terror alerts are being used for political gain and all that. I mean, in 2001, you never would have imagined hearing a story or mainstream.
You wouldn't have Governor Ridge, the head of Homeland Security, a year ago, writing a book about how they put out fake terror alerts.
Right.
For political gain.
It was amazing. And I want to back up to one thing that you said a little while ago about Ron Paul. He was considering whether or not to run depending on the dollar crashing, et cetera.
He must run just to get the message out.
Exactly, and that's why I agree with you. That
He's going to run, don't worry.
Ultimately, he will. Because
let me just tell you, barring health problems, he's running. Okay, I'm not going to go any further, but believe me, don't worry about it.
And I don't disagree with you at all.